Hello, Space Junkies, and welcome to episode number 100. That's right, the centennial episode of What a Piece of Junk, the Star Wars podcast here on the Fandom Podcast Network. And as you can imagine, we're going to go all out for this episode 100 spectacular. So, of course, joining us are going to be some luminaries here amongst the galaxy of stars on the FPN. Chief among them is Commander Kyle, the Admiral himself. Kyle, welcome to the Drunken Gungan.
It is always good to be on here. I can't believe this ship has survived 100 episodes, but that's a whole other story. But it is good to be here. It's so good to be here for you guys' 100th episode. Congratulations. And I can't think of a better way to cover it than with the season finale of Andor.
Absolutely. And of course, joining me in the cockpit, as always, is my original podcast co-host, Mr. Derek Marsh. Derek, how's it going out there?
It's going good, Scott. I mean, think about it, man. We've been doing this for 3 years.
I know. It's, we started it sort of as a COVID project because what else were we going to do, right? And then it took on a life of its own. And, it's like a rebellion springing up all over the galaxy at once. And a guy who knows a lot about being all over, especially right now, is Mr. Kevin Reitzel, the Raider nerd who is hanging out down under.
Sort of. I'm in Naboo.
That's right.
No, well, yes, I am. I'm temporarily in Australia right now.
Yes.
So, wait, shouldn't he be upside down?
I was going to say, shouldn't his camera be upside down, or is his camera upside down so he looks?
Oh, no. The Drunken Gungan is sophisticated enough that it has tapped into the Star Wars HoloNet to where it can auto-correct. But because we're using the Star Wars HoloNet, his signal might get a little choppy like it did for Sergeant Mosk there. And speaking of people that are chopping up things, it's my original Wookiee co-pilot, our very own Dave Filclone, man of 1,000 nicknames, Mr. Dathan Miracle. See, I knew something was going to go wrong with the HoloNet. It's not translating his Sherwook the way that it's supposed to.
I'm just thinking he was just talking about something about happening at Disney. I don't know, but they have translation blocks on any news with that. So
yeah, that's right.
I thought he was going to talk about getting his red robe pressed off.
Yes. Oh, thank you.
Dry cleaners.
Yes.
Yeah, I did have to get that red robe cleaned because I wore it quite a bit this past week, visiting family for Life Day.
That's right. Yep, Life Day, good times. I don't know about you guys, but we had a great Thanksgiving over here in North Carolina. I hope everything went well for all points in between with Florida and Kentucky and the land of Australia.
Yes.
Yep. Much mashed potatoes and turkey were consumed. So yes.
The real question is, Kevin, were you able to get anything close to Thanksgiving-style food in Australia? Because my sister lives in Tasmania, and she got, nothing. Maybe a turkey sandwich at Subway.
Yes. Well, also, too, my wife is a vegetarian. So that was another challenge. But I just made sure that we had, mashed potatoes. I had mac and cheese. We had fried I think it was fried vegetables. They had fried vegetables, and we had a few other things. But we didn't have this big grand thing, no. But we just wanted to spend some time with the immediate family and just say what we're thankful for. And my wife did a fantastic job of preparing it, and I washed dishes.
Outstanding.
So next time it's tofu turkey then.
No. Wait, I have to give Kevin credit though. He upheld the ultimate Thanksgiving tradition. He exposed his wife to WKRP in Cincinnati. Turkeys away.
Yes,
I did, and I think there might have been a little bit of napping. There might have been so.
A fine tradition.
Good time.
Next is Alice's restaurant there, so that you can get her the massacre Thanksgiving. So.
Well, speaking of traditions, guys, we had the traditional eye-opening, mind-blowing Star Wars streaming series season finale for Andor here. But for me, I think this may have been, it really did meet that criteria that Derek and I talked about in episode 99 of the podcast, where it was the longest runtime for a Star Wars streaming series finale.
But still under an hour.
It's still under an hour. Yes, it would be long, but only for certain definitions of long. But we're gonna move at a pretty quick pace because we've got a lot to discuss. And in part 2 of this episode of the podcast, we're gonna, after the break, come back and talk about our impression of Andor as a series as a whole, and then do a little bit of predictions or pontification about what we hope happens with Star Wars Andor Season 2 that we know is on its way at some point in the future. So yeah, we're going to jump right into the 5 questions. So Kyle, I'll start with you and just sort of go around the horn here. Question 1, what did you like best about this episode 12, Rick's Road? Rick's Road.
Truthfully, there's only one thing. As far, if you're going to pick the high point of this, it's Marva's speech. I mean, that is so powerful, and to watch the reactions of everybody around her, from citizens to her friends to Bix to the Empire, members of the Empire, and the Empire soldiers themselves, just so incredibly powerful. And maybe it might be the greatest speech in Star Wars now. And that's how powerful that speech was, and how powerful that moment was.
Yeah, it was a heavy moment. Kevin, what did you like best about this episode?
It didn't disappoint to where I felt it was going to end, meaning that Andor made the choice to take a chance and find out if he's actually. I kind of get the feeling he was like, okay, look, I'm being chased on both ends here, and I'm going to take my chances with the rebellion here, especially since he listened to the manifesto. And I felt that it reached a really good conclusion, especially at the end there, and it was satisfying as well, where he gave the choice to look, you either kill me or you let me join you.
Right.
And I love the look on. I'm sorry, I'm forgetting his name.
Luthen.
Yeah, Luthen. I just love the look. Like, I like this guy, and I think that he realizes his worth, and that's what we saw in the first couple episodes, and it felt that there was a good payoff there. So I thought it was great. That right there, of that satisfying. Okay, he's joining the rebellion now for sure. Yeah. He's got his rebellion card. He's got the fast pass.
He's all in. Kevin, I'll take a slight little rabbit trail here because you mentioned Luthen as part of your favorite section of the episode. What do you think about the fandom theory that Luthen is a Jedi in hiding?
I like that theory. I'm not, if he isn't, I'm not going to be disappointed about it. If he is, same. I'm kind of on the fence about it, but I like the fact that we haven't seen any of that. And I almost kind of preferred if he wasn't, just because it makes him as a normal human even more impressive. And he talking about speeches, the episode where he basically says, what have I given up? Still my favorite right now. I'm high on that one, but Marvo's was good though. But either way, I'm fine with it. I love the theories, and but I think people are missing Jedi, so therefore they are hoping and kind of reaching for that a little bit. But I hope he isn't. But either way, I'm fine with it.
Cool. All right, Derek, what did you like best about this episode?
So like I said, I've got a little bit of Lee filling this to talk about too for each of our subjects real quick. But Lee and I had some discussion, and really it's kind of together. His favorite part was the same as Kyle with its Marva's speech. But what I really liked about this was it wasn't this episode in particular. It wasn't about our heroes doing everything. It was literally the people doing it, right? We've never really seen, quote unquote, the background characters being it, right? It's always been forefront, our main heroes, and even with the action scenes and stuff like that. I mean, you get a little bit like in the pilot scenes and a little bit in the fighting, but really this at the forefront is really all about how the rebellion starts, right? And it starts from the people inside. It's not like the main character gives the main speech, right, and gets everyone riled up and doing that. It's somebody that's, quote unquote, a side character, right? And the people that we've kind of have been, quote unquote, growing up with over these past 12 weeks between Bix and Braza and I don't know the kid's name. I can't remember it. But all of them, right? And everyone that has had some impact in Cassian's life and on Ferrix themselves. And it was kind of interesting because Luthen, who was there present during it, right? They're all trying to figure out where Cassian is, like everyone else is. But once he sees stuff hit the fan, he gets out of there. He's like, oh, I don't need to be a part of this because I understand what's going on here, right? It was kind of funny. Like, he wasn't there to like partake and like try to get any cheap shots with the Imperials. He's just like, all right, time to get out of here before, I get exposed.
Yeah, totally. Nathan, what was your favorite part of this episode?
You can talk about Marva's speech all you want, but my favorite thing was Brasso bashing people with Marva's brick.
Yes.
and you know that she's looking down from Star Wars afterlife, wherever she is, going, yep, that's fine. You can literally use my brick as a weapon.
Yeah.
This is what she would have wanted. So that was my favorite part.
Punching space Nazis from beyond the grave.
Yeah.
Good
well,
time.
I mean, that's it, right? If you really want to stand up, she should have been like, I want to be turned into some brass knuckles or something, right? So.
Yes, right?
A brick, in the hands of Brasso, a brick is sufficient weapon.
Yeah.
Yes, definitely. For me, it's a teeny little detail that I like the best about this episode that was building over the course of the whole season, and that is the opening soundtrack when the Andor logo fades into view. In this episode, episode 12, it's the marching band playing the Andor theme. And it turns out that the Andor theme this whole season has been a version of the song they played with the marching band at Marva's funeral in this episode. And if you go back and look and listen to the theme music at the logo screen for every episode, each episode more instruments get added to the theme music, so that's the building of the different individual people in the rebellion joining in that struggle against the Empire. And you can hear now that it's this entire marching band as the whole planet of Ferrix basically comes together to memorialize her and then fight against the Empire. It's just such beautiful filmmaking to have the music be so important there. And hats off to the crew that did the soundtrack for Andor, doing that audio storytelling at the little opening logo every episode to where we reach this climax here. It's almost like the whole season, the band has been tuning up for this performance at the funeral. It's just, I saw another YouTube video talking about that earlier today, and I was just like, oh, yes, I absolutely recognized that the music became more multi-layered as we went on in the season, but I didn't really catch on that it was, that sort of symbolism there. Not visual imagery, but audio imagery. So really good stuff. All right, we'll go in reverse order this time. So, Nathan, what did you dislike the most about this episode?
Well, coming off of the last episode, I had a little personal pet theory that Marva wasn't actually dead, that the Daughters of Ferrix just used the idea that she could be dead as cover, that they just had her lie still and moved her out and were actually smuggling her out somewhere. And that technically could still be true, but it certainly doesn't seem like it's the case. So my least favorite thing is that my personal pet theory didn't come to pass.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's, it's disappointing because that also means you have to accept that Marva's really and truly dead.
Yes, and I didn't want to accept that. But, it's probably better in the long run for the story. Mm-hmm. So I guess I can admit that the people at Disney actually have some idea of how to tell stories.
Oh, well, I mean, this is because the other Bob returned, right? He just waved his magic wand and fixed the whole story group, right?
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, my theory was correct until the other Bob came back, and he was like, no, we ain't doing that.
All right. Derek, what did you dislike the most about this episode? As Kyle tries not to explode. He's biting his lip so hard it's bleeding.
It was too short.
Too short? Good answer.
I mean, because I get it. Like, so this is the interesting thing, like, because even with Mandalorian season 1, season 2, it kind of, the story comes to an end, right? And yes, we know Rogue One is essentially the end of the story. I get that. But the way they left it on this one particular, there's just so much left unanswered still at this point, right?
Mm-hmm.
Of what we got with characters. And I'll go more into that when we get to after the break and talk about season 2 and expectations and blah, blah, blah. But just overall that is really where I felt like, oh my God, I got to wait at least another year or two at this point for the next season, because they just started filming season 2 now. And obviously they're going to be breaking here for holidays. So, we're probably looking into maybe, if we're fortunate enough, by December of next year. I mean, there might be, because of the well reception and how much we've loved this, they might put it a little bit higher priority in the Star Wars production stuff as once they finish it. But we'll see. So, and then Lee's thing was about Deidre, who got lost in the sewers. He says he was disappointed that she's been brilliant up to this point, and then all of a sudden she just really didn't she fell flat, right? She encountered some a little bit of resistance here and a little bit of threat of fighting, and she freezes up, right? So
yeah. I'll talk a little bit more about Deidre when it's my turn to answer this question. So I'm kind of on the same wavelength as Lee there. So thank you to Lee for that point. Kevin, what did you dislike most about this episode?
I can't really pick anything that bugged me. And, I'm usually, when it comes to questions like this, I don't like to, unless it's something that's obvious, but I thought the length was fine. I thought the conclusion was fine. When you're talking about Dedra, it just made me think she's been so on top of her game for so long, and she's been this strong, she's always strong. And it's just that, but we're getting characters out of their elements, I think.
Yes.
And if you think about it, I don't know how much combat training that she's had, but she was out of her element, out of her comfort zone. And, what's his name that rescued her? I keep forgetting the name.
Cyril.
Yes, Cyril. I remember Cyril. He likes Cyril.
Cyril.
His Cocoa Puffs.
I kind of felt he was in his element. He's been here, Andor.
Yeah.
He's I was just 3 months ago.
Yeah. So he's oh, I got you. Okay, maybe he could. I was kind of hoping they'd kiss. Didn't get the kiss. There we go.
They had to keep it PG. So
yeah. All right, Kyle.
I guess that's it. So go ahead.
Yeah, Kyle. What did you dislike about this episode?
I'm not gonna say I disliked it, but I almost feel like, and it's a point kind of Derek brought up, where this episode ends, we have so much to cover, and we know already what the set time frame is for Andor as far as episodes. So that's leaving a lot to cover in those remaining episodes, because you're covering a lot more time frame. So I think that was more than anything. It made me feel like, gosh, I wish they were doing just they do 4 seasons of Andor, and every season would be a year of Andor, 1 year leading into Rogue One.
Yeah.
I think so. But I mean, again, there's nothing I really hated, but I think that was my kind of moment feeling. It's still so many plot points hanging. I know we've got season 2 coming, but there's an awful lot to cover here.
Yeah. For me, it was also the Deidre story arc in this episode. She was doing such a good job of, and I think maybe this is the whole point. She was doing such a good job of keeping the rest of the Imperials in line, because the station commander wanted to set up snipers, and she was like, no snipers. I want to capture Andor alive, because she was thinking that they could go ahead and get him without much incident. None of the Imperials appeared to be expecting that there was going to be a riot, which is crazy. But their overconfidence is their weakness, or so I've heard. And so I think for me, I disliked the way that Deidre was down there amongst the people fighting. There's no reason that she should be drawing weapons and firing blaster bolts. That was just silly. And secondly, I didn't like the way that Cyril had to save her. She doesn't strike me as the kind of character that needs rescuing. She's definitely not a damsel in distress, although in this situation she needed somebody to come along and help her. But their whole romance creeps me out so much that I'm just like, oh, great, this is still going to be a thing. Ugh. Very, very, squeaky.
It can't be any worse than Lannisters.
Yeah, but see, this is part of the reason that this is part of the reason I avoided Game of Thrones.
It's kind of like watching 2 nerds flirt. It's a little awkward. How are they
two introvert nerds flirt?
Yes. Yeah. It's a good point. Yeah.
I want to just throw out, as far as what you're saying about Deidre too. I think that's the point of the storyline, though. She was kind of at this high where everything was going really well, so she had this hubris and confidence. It goes south, and who's there to bail her, to kind of rescue her and bail out? Is Cyril, who's like, what? We can't figure out what he is week to week, other than he creeps you out really bad. And I think this is kind of where she's kind of in almost a state of shock because everything's just gone so south so rapidly, and she doesn't know how to adapt and change that much on the fly.
Yeah.
So I think that was kind of a reflection of that character arc, and so that'll be interesting to see how that rolls over.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. All right, moving on to question 3. We'll start again with Kyle. But in this question, guys, try not to take everything away from the people coming after you, because there's going to be plenty of answers here. Question number 3, as always, Kyle, what connections did you draw to the rest of the Star Wars galaxy?
Well, obviously, to me, the big thing is the start of the rebellion. And I actually saw something very interesting online that somebody said that in their own headcanon, around the same time Marva's speech is going on is when Ezra's speech is happening in Rebels. And I've got a feeling that, you're probably, I wouldn't be surprised if the time frame wasn't too that far between those. And I think that's, for me, was the big connecting thing. We're seeing those, quote, rebel sparks of the rebellion starting now. I mean, they were there, but now that between Luthen's actions, what Marva did here, and it's spreading, and it's gaining more interesting. And the other thing as far as connections is Mon Mothma, who is, talk about playing the political game right now and throwing her husband
under the land speeder.
I mean, some major connections there because of just we know what her importance is going to be going forward, and I think she's starting to figure out the game a little bit more and showing a little bit of that Luthen side where, sometimes some people got to get sacrificed for the greater good here.
Yeah.
So I think those were my 2 big connections that I pulled.
Cool. Kevin, what other connections did you see to the broader Star Wars universe?
I'm going to go with the obvious, which is the end credit scene that we were all kind of hoping for, that we would see what the hell they were making.
Yes.
And I was kind of chuckling to myself because I was going, in Rogue One, when they're looking at the Death Star plans briefly, and she's trying to figure out that's where they are. Do you think he goes, wait a minute, go back a little bit? I remember those, There's so much irony there with Andor and the Death Star, and I love it. It's in your face. It's there. He's like, he made part of the Death Star that's doing this, and then he gets to help take it down. So I'm just going to say the obvious because I loved it, and I love the payoff.
Well, and of course, once again, I'll jump down a slight rabbit trail here with you. The rebellion ends up using the Death Star almost to better effect than the Empire, because the whole, fear of it and the atrocity there, and then Luke destroying it, he becomes a hero of the galaxy, right? And really helps with recruitment. And it's like, without Andor and his fellow prisoners, the Death Star wouldn't have come to realization. And so it reminds me of Luthen's speech. I'm doomed to use my enemy's weapons against them, right? And that's exactly what Andor's whole life turns out being when he joins the rebellion, is that he's turning the Empire's weapons against them, in this case, literally, in some cases, figuratively. So, excellent answer, Kevin. Derek, what connections did you draw to the rest of the Star Wars galaxy?
Well, I'll do Lee's first, so that way it's out of a different order. He had 2 of them. The first one was the DL-44 blaster. And that it was actually in the hands of a villain this time instead of our hero. He did quote that, other than the brief second that Vader snatched it from Han in Empire Strikes Back.
Yes, right.
But and then also the Sand Troopers. So
yeah, Kevin, you got an interjection.
Just real quick, as you guys know, I'm with the 501st, and there's a lot of Imperial officers. As an option, you can use the DL-44 as your sidearm, and I have one for one of my costumes. And you can also choose the blaster one as well, or these new officer blasters that you see a lot in The Mandalorian. But the DL-44 is a sidearm that Imperial officers can choose to use, at least in the 501st. So
cool. All right, Derek. So that's Lee's answer.
Yeah. So my actual connection then. So, and it wasn't like 100% press on it, but we didn't get we got what we talked about, right, with Krieger, right, Scott, that it wasn't going to be shown. It was just going to be talked about, right. But if you look at the way that the ISB screen is in regards to like when they're talking about the battle and how all the ships and all that, and it's got the radar scanner and it's red and the white and all that stuff, it's exactly from A New Hope.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So when they're looking at when the Death Star is turning and it's cleared, has cleared the planet, has cleared the planet, right? And it's about to shoot off. It's the same type of sphere and the way they're projecting and being able to read the battle plans and how the battle went. So I really enjoyed that.
Yeah, good times, good times. Nathan, what did you draw as a connection to the rest of the Star Wars galaxy?
All right. Well, I've got a couple of blink and you miss it type things. One is the cameras that they've got on Bix in the hotel. Those are the same style of cameras as we see in A New Hope. I really like that connection because Chewbacca shoots one of those cameras out. So that's in the detention center on the Death Star. And the other one is Perrin apparently lost some gambling funds at Canto Bight.
Yes.
So we had a mention of the Last Jedi location there.
Yeah,
Nathan, real quick, when those monitors you mentioned, I kept thinking back to my early days at Star Wars CCG playing, and you draft those damn cards, go, what the hell are we going to use this for? Throw it in for Destiny. Throw it in for
hollow
Destiny.
communicators.
Yeah, right, yes.
Sorry, go ahead.
All right, so that's what I got. What do you have, Scott?
Okay, so for me, this goes. I'm going to slightly echo Kyle here, but Marva's hologram projection from an astromech, a beat up old astromech, her hologram trying to instill action and motivation and hope to a bunch of people. I mean, it was the classic Princess Leia moment of "Help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi, you're my only hope." An astromech projecting an image of a woman telling you the Empire is wrong and you got to help us is, I mean, what could be more Star Warsy, right? But it's an even grander tradition than that because, of course, we have the same thing happening with R2-D2 in Return of the Jedi. He projects an image of Luke when he's all, a gift for your excellency, right? So astromechs projecting a hologram of somebody important is a huge Star Wars tradition when it comes to the rebellion trying to, gin up support and what have you. But of course, Tony Gilroy and company here in Andor take this to the next level because not only does Marva give that speech, right? But there's a scene where the Imperial officer is standing on the street. He's like, I've heard enough. And he goes and tries to throw his coat over the projector, but he only gets half of it. So half of her face is now in shadow because you can see the shadow of the dark side encroaching on the galaxy. And that hologram is trying to break through with a being of pure light is trying to oppose the shadow that's coming across her face. Geez, I can't even, I was like, almost drooling when I was looking at the cinematography there. I'm like, how could this be any better Star Wars? It's amazing. And then, of course, we missed a couple super obvious ones too, which I can't let go. But Death Troopers showed up again. So, Death Troopers from Rogue One, but then also have been seen in a lot of Star Wars animation as well. And then at the beginning of this episode, when Deidre arrives on Ferrix, she gets out of that epic Lambda class Imperial shuttle. So big time Return of the Jedi vibes with the beautiful Imperial shuttle there landing with the wings, doing the thing, just very, very much Empire and Star Wars. And one last thing about Marva's monologue, I can't let it go because it's my favorite part of the whole thing so far. When she is in the middle of her speech about climbing up out of the darkness is when we interpose the shots of Cassian climbing out of the sewer to go save Bix. So he is climbing up, rising, while she's talking about rising metaphorically. Anyway, okay, so
Kevin's
Nathan.
got one.
Oh yeah, go Kevin.
Can we please give it up to the bell tower guy pushing down a stormtrooper? Boom, 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 kicking him down. Give me that figure right now.
Is he the original? Did the armorer learn a trade or two from him?
There we go. I was just saying, but it reminds me of the armorer kicking butt with the hammer
and the wrench.
Yep.
So
he lived, right? We didn't see him die.
He lived. Yeah.
I was expecting someone to sniper him down, but they didn't.
Well, remember,
the trooper go.
Yeah. And made Cassian kicking butt in this fight too, because he takes out a Death Trooper with a diving shot from his pistol. And Death Troopers are pretty hard to kill. I mean, that's their whole thing, right? I learned something new about Death Troopers when I was researching stuff about this episode for tonight's podcast. There's a extended universe story now. I don't know if it's a comic or if it's in a novel, but the Emperor called them Death Troopers because he was trying to emphasize the fact that they were hard to kill because they've got all the cybernetic enhancements. But there's an urban legend in the Star Wars galaxy that they are dead stormtroopers that were reanimated by the Empire, and they're called Death Troopers because they're essentially zombies. Or Kevin and Kyle, you'll recognize this reference. They're the universal soldier of the Star Wars galaxy. That's the whole like that somehow the populace started a rumor that these are stormtroopers that got killed, but then they put the cybernetics and all in them to reanimate their bodies. Now that isn't true, but Palpatine is letting that rumor go out there and occasionally has the ISB enhance it to add to the mystique around Death Troopers.
And apparently they're all played by basketball players. They're always tall.
Yes.
But aren't those the Dark Troopers though?
Well, now Dark Troopers are all droids, right?
No, because that's what we talked about. That was version 3 that we see in Mando.
Yeah, they eventually end up being all droid.
When they removed the man from the machine is when, Moff Gideon said is when they found, that they were the best, right? When they were full cybernetics. So,
yeah. Well, of course, Death Troopers would predate the Dark Trooper project. So maybe they get that rumor of, it's reanimated zombie troopers, and they decide, hey, maybe we should actually try that. And so with Dark Troopers, they try to do that.
Well, by then they would have had plenty of clones laying around, right? So
or dead stormtroopers.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm gonna do question 4, but then I don't know who put question 5 in the list, but whether it was Nathan or Derek, but I'll let you guys take over at that time. It was Nathan. Okay, cool. So question 4 for this episode specific. Will Cyril and Daedra have a quirky romance, or is she going to just keep pushing him away into the future of season 2? And I'll start this time. I think just because I'm squicked out by it, yes, they're totally going to have their weird serial killer romance thing. It's going to be like Natural Born Killers with, those guys in that movie. And I will hate it. And every time we talk about it in season 2, I'll be all, this is my least favorite part of the episode. I don't know. Maybe they'll make it work, and I'll be like, this is actually very well done. So, yeah. Anyway, Kyle, what do you think? Are Daedra and Cyril gonna be a couple?
They're gonna be a couple, but it's not gonna be necessarily a willing couple. I can see where Cyril has saved Daedra now. We don't know where they've ended up together. If he is like still with her and she's got this so shaken confidence after everything that's happened here, could we almost see like a little bit of Stockholm syndrome where she kind of falls for her kidnapper here, and the man who's helping her because she was at a weak point does something, and then when she gets back to kind of being herself, maybe later within the second season of Andor, things hit the fan between the two of them. I think it's going to be kind of one of these relationships where one person is just at an absolutely weak moment, and the other one is kind of taking advantage of it, and it's not going to end. If it happens, it's not going to end well. Let's put it that way.
It's going to be like Sandra Bullock and Keanu Reeves in the first Speed, right? They were just all about each other because they lived through crisis together, right?
Yeah.
Kevin, what do you think? We got a Daedra and Cyril romance coming, or this is not going to happen?
I don't think we're going to get a traditional type of romance. Because what's the old saying? When you see kissing in Star Wars, that's pretty much sex.
Yes. Thank you, Irving Kirschner.
I think so. Okay, so here's the thing. I think that their relationship, whatever it is, one of them's not going to survive it. Cyril is a company man through and through. I was wondering if they were going to make him turn to see like, oh, wait a minute, maybe, this devastation or whatever that I've seen on the rebellion side, maybe there's a real cause for it. I think he is going to cement himself in with the Empire and be whatever officer or whatever help, because he knows Ferrix way too well. And Ferrix is going to become an example to the rest of the rebellion and the rest of the citizens. This city is going to be pretty much destroyed, occupied, enslaved, whatever it is. It's going to be made an example of. And Cyril and Daedra are going to be part of that. She's going to be part of that because of what she's seen. And I think that whatever happens there is going to be put out there for the rest of the rebellion and the civilians to see how bad this is going to happen. And I think that it would be very interesting for them, not necessarily as a couple, but as a team, to orchestrate this and then become targets. And that's assassination attempts, maybe something like that. So that's what I think is going to happen. I think it'll be more partnership, not necessarily a romantic thing.
Okay, yeah, I hope you're right. I would prefer that more so than the traditional romance. Derek, what do you think?
Yeah, I don't. I mean, if it is, it is. If it isn't, it isn't. I mean, it's hard to say. Because like I said, it was the way this episode ended. As Kevin pointed out, I'm surprised that we didn't see them kiss, but whether it is or not, and we didn't even get like the way this episode ended. You didn't get anything afterwards either, right? Like they're just stuck in a closet somewhere, apparently.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I don't know. I mean, at the end of the day, I could see Cyril turning on Deidre in something to get himself, like he will turn into his mother eventually and do whatever it is to keep the name and the power or keep the prestige. So she'll they'll start a romance if they do. And then at some point he'll have to turn on her and he'll be the one that kills her. I think will be the one.
Interesting. Of course, at this point, she's treating him the way his mom often treats him, so that just makes him like her even more, right? So, yeah. Nathan, what do you think?
I think no on the romance. I don't think they have a real romance. I think they might have a romance, but I don't think it's really there because Cyril doesn't really see Deidre as a person. Cyril sees Deidre as a representation of the Empire and what he feels the Empire is supposed to be and how Imperials are supposed to act. He's not really considering her as a person. He's considering her job and what she does. And it's the same thing the other way around. Deidre doesn't really see Cyril as a person. Deidre sees Cyril as an asset. And the moment it becomes convenient for either one of them to treat the other not as a person, that's what's going to happen. So they may try something, but I think it's absolutely doomed to failure. One of them will betray the other in the name of, well, you've betrayed. It's going to be kind of a Darth Vader thing. From my point of view, the Jedi are evil. I haven't betrayed you, even though I'm the one doing whatever it is that is the betrayal. You've betrayed me by not living up to my ideal of what you are supposed to be.
Yeah.
So overall, I say no. But I do think it's interesting that Deidre ends up at the point where Cyril started off. Because in the first few episodes, Cyril decides, I'm going to take care of this myself. My people aren't getting the job done, so I'm going to go in and take care of this, and realizes very quickly it's not the same when it's your boots on the ground. And Deidre does the same thing at the end. Oh, well, I'm going to come oversee this personally because I know what I'm doing. But as soon as she hits the ground, everything goes way south for her. So I think they've got a kinship, but not something to build a relationship on.
A man who holds a woman up as a set of ideals instead of a human, and a woman who views this man as a means to an end instead of a human. I don't know. Sounds like a relationship to me. Hey, I'm just kidding. But unfortunately, too many people have that experience in their attempts at a relationship. Yeah, okay. Well, Nathan, take it away for the final question about episode 12.
All right. Well, in this episode, we see Cassian go join Luthen to become an official member of the rebellion. And we see a lot of other characters engage in rebellious acts, but we don't necessarily see any of them officially join the rebellion. So what I'd love to hear from everybody is just grab one character from this episode, and do you think they're going to join the rebellion? Yes, no, why not? So we'll start with Derek.
Well, I think Bix is already part of the rebellion because I think that's how Luthen knows about Cassian. And that's why they were, obviously doing that. So I think she's already part of it. But I will say B2. Yeah, he'll want to join the rebellion because he's obviously going to be with Cassian.
All right. Kevin.
Mon Mothma.
All right. Well,
you know what? It's you know what? I'm not sure because Bix is obvious if she's okay.
Yeah.
I want to go with Hammer Guy, Bell Tower Guy, because I would love to see him be muscle. I'd love to see him be. I want to see what else that he can do with his hands. So, but I just have a feeling Ferrex is just going to get thrashed. I don't know.
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
It's going to
be glass.
Might be a test for the Death Star.
Yeah.
All right, Kyle, what you got?
Brasso. I mean, he's already used bricks, and I mean, this is a guy who I think he's kind of. I think what's interesting about the people of this planet are that they were all kind of together against the Empire anyway, but they just didn't really understand the full threat, and now they understand the full threat. But I think he was kind of shown throughout this series to be kind of a leader of the people in a way, somebody who's highly respected. And I think now that he has sided with Cassie and left with everybody, I think he's a prime person to join the rebellion and probably end up being in the hierarchy of at least troop management and being somebody who would be a leader of men within the rebellion.
Very good, Scott.
I'm going to say the kid that built the bomb in this episode and threw the bomb into the speeder. I think his name is Vilma, something like that. He already watched the Empire kill his father with the horrible torture thing that they did to Bix. His dad was the guy that ran the scrap shop where Bix would go and climb up in the tower and do the little secret radio thing earlier this season. And so they captured him and tortured him with the horrible singing alien children. And he basically went insane. And I think they legitimately just killed him. So that's why when he's building his bomb, he has that hologram of his dad sitting there because he's like, I'm remembering this vengeance.
They were supposed to hang him, remember?
Yeah.
Did anyone else think Did anyone else think the bomb kid looked like Bruno Mars?
A little bit, yeah. Yeah, a little bit.
No, but I do now.
Wait, Nathan, you actually know who Bruno Mars is?
Yeah, he did a Super Bowl halftime show once.
That's true. He did. Yes.
I
think everybody's done a Super Bowl halftime show at this point.
Okay, so. Yeah, but I actually happened to watch that Super Bowl.
Okay.
Which is kind of spotty for me. Because I'm more about the college football.
Yeah, no, but they did kill him, though, because that was the whole point where the one Imperial was asking Deidre that he wanted to hang the guy to make an example of him.
Yes, that's right. So, yes, they did eventually actually kill off this kid's father. So, yeah, he's got every reason in the world to be mad at the Empire, and he's pretty good at building bombs, apparently. So, I mean, even if he doesn't join the, let's just say, sanitized side of the rebellion that we all saw in episodes 4, 5, and 6, he might join up with Saw Gerrera's crew to be a little more, violent, partisan rebellion.
Yeah. Well, and I was also surprised you didn't talk about it earlier as your favorite part either when, Scott, when Andor was listening to Karras's journal.
Oh,
and
yeah.
He was talking about
Nimic's manifesto is great, and it's written so well. It's interesting to see that Nimic ends his manifesto with that one word. Everybody can contribute to the rebellion. It's like little blades of grass springing up between the cracks of the sidewalk that the Empire is trying to pave over the galaxy. The Empire is an unnatural state of order that they're trying to impose upon a natural world. And he just says, anytime you feel like you can't do anything and it's too big for you to fight them, just do one little thing. Just try. And give it your try. Give it your best. Just try. It's the opposite of what Master Yoda was telling Luke. Do or do not, there is no try, right? And I think that shows that the rebellion succeeds where the Jedi Order failed because they were simply the light mirror of what the Empire is doing. They were trying to impose order, it's right there in their name, the Jedi Order, into a natural world. And that's what Luke was trying to teach Rey in The Last Jedi. We can't sit there and say that if the Jedi die, that means there's no light side. Of course there's a light side without the Jedi. In fact, the light side does better when people just let nature do its thing and let the Force do its thing. Anytime you start trying to make things go the way that you see, you're going to cause problems. And the Empire found that out. The First Order found that out. The Jedi Order found that out. The Infinite Empire found that out. The Sith.
They always find
Sith
out, right?
Empire found that out. You know,
It's well,
everything.
yeah.
The Cardassians found out, right?
Yeah. Yes. Although whole different universe, but still same deal, right? Yeah. The more you tighten your grip, the more blades of grass will slip through your sidewalks. Wait, no, I think I might have mixed up metaphors from Rebellion there. Anyway, but yes, I love Nimic's manifesto is still a thing, and we get to see Cassian has been reading it, and to Kevin's point earlier about Cassian's all in on the Rebellion now. I think the fact that he took that time to keep thinking about what Nimic had to say made that decision easier for Cassian. Of course, the death of his own mother helped, but the Empire didn't directly kill his mom, so it wasn't as big of a deal as it was for certain other members of the rebellion. So that was, I think Nimic's words were pretty huge.
But if the Empire hadn't held him prisoner for no reason, he would have been able to be there for when his mom died. So
yeah, because he's just a tourist.
Yeah, right. I'm just a tourist. Or at the very least, he would have been able to go back and spirit her away to somewhere that might have had better medical care available, right? So, yeah. Okay, well, cool. Excellent discussions about episode 12. We're going to take a short break, and then we will come back and talk about our impressions of the series as a whole, as one of the more long-form Star Wars streaming series. 12 episodes was huge for a Star Wars streaming series. So we'll be right back.
Thank you for listening. We hope you're enjoying this podcast. Here are the other great shows on the Fandom Podcast Network. Culture Clash, where we discuss the latest in entertainment and pop culture. Blood of Kings, our show covering the entire Highlander universe. Couch Potato Theater, we celebrate our favorite movies. And Time Warp, our fandom flashback show discussing a year in movies and our favorite retro movie, TV, and pop culture topics. Good Evening, discussing all things Alfred Hitchcock. Hair Metal Podcast, we cover the rock metal music of the 80s and early 90s. Type 40, a Doctor Who podcast, discussing the time-traveling Doctor Who universe. Lethal Mullet, an action film podcast covering the 80s, 90s, and beyond. Also, check out the Lethal Mullet Network for more great podcasts. What a Piece of Junk, our Star Wars podcast. Making Treks, a Star Trek podcast with a deep dive into the final frontier. The Fandom Show, our Fandom Podcast Network live YouTube show discussing the hottest topics in fandom. The True Believers MCU podcast, discussing the Marvel Cinematic and Television Universe. Union Federation, our Star Trek and the Orville show. And we're proud to welcome the BQN Network to the Fandom Podcast Network. Please visit our friends on the BQN Network, a Star Trek Universe podcast that also includes your favorite topics, movies, history, superheroes, and more. You can find the Fandom Podcast Network on YouTube. The Fandom Podcast Network is also on all major podcast platforms. The Fandom Podcast Network audio master feed is on Podbean at fpnet.podbean.com. You can find the Fandom Podcast Network on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. You can email us at fandompodcastnetwork@gmail.com. Thank you so much for listening, and remember, respect others and enjoy your fandom.
All right, great. Excellent work there, Kevin. It sounded like you did that, just perfectly off the cuff. It's beautiful. Okay, so we'll dive into a little more of an overall view of Andor as a streaming series in the first season thereof. Guys, when I heard that Andor was going to get his own series, I was a little taken aback at first. I'm like, well, he was a cool part of Rogue One, but I'm not sure how compelling a story about Cassian is going to be, since we, don't know that much about him, and he's not really that big of a Star Wars luminary. But man, this has been like the most tightly written, most intricately detailed Star Wars backstory for a character in a long, long time. I mean, I feel like at this point, the only Star Wars character whose background I know better than Cassian is Darth Vader. Kevin, what do you think?
Yeah, I wanted to build on that, because Kyle and I did a friend's podcast when the first 2 episodes were released. And as you know, as Star Wars fans, there was a lot of, oh, it didn't have this. Oh, it was so slow. I didn't ask for this, but it's still cool, whatever. And I said straight ahead, and I got this from the first 2 episodes. I don't know if you guys did, and I still stand by it. This show isn't about Andor. This show is about everyone else and the rebellion. It's his name. And if you think about it, he's had the least amount of dialogue, it feels like.
Yeah.
And it's about everyone else, and that's what Tony Gilroy and his team have done. They're like, okay, we're going to call it Andor because we have to call it something to tie it to Rogue One. But this show is not necessarily always about Andor, and I like the fact that we got so much character building from all of these other great characters. And it was such great drama to watch all the way through. I didn't miss lightsabers. I didn't miss Darth Vaders. I didn't miss Han Solos. I got a whole new story, and I was enthralled. It is just great writing, great drama, and I love that we have all of these new characters that will live on in our fandom.
Yeah, totally. Kyle, what do you think about season 1 as a whole, and just this entire series so far?
Well, I've said from the start, I was very excited about Andor when they announced it. I love Rogue One. I was ready to get back into this world. You add in the Tony Gilroy factor, who I love anyway with the Bourne films and everything he's done there. And this worked for so many different reasons. And what I love about this, in a few ways it stands out, it's so different from anything else we've ever been exposed to in Star Wars. And it's even different than Rogue One because it's dark. And it's a dark side. We're kind of looking at the underbelly of the rebellion at a time of Star Wars we've never really, in canon, dug into, with whether it's on movies or TV shows or anything like that. And it's so well done and well written. And Kevin has a perfect point. Andor might be the center of this show. He might be the sun that everything revolves around here, but it's so much more focused on the other characters. And what they did was they wrote these characters. Yes, it's Andor's perspective, but they've written these characters to where you're seeing these characters develop, maybe like you're looking through Cassian's eyes. In that, our main characters are point of view character.
That's a great point, Kyle, because in a way, in certain episodes and scenes, Andor is almost the MacGuffin when you think about it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I love that. And this is nothing to take away from Diego Luna. He's fantastic in this. But everyone seems to have a moment to shine, especially Luthen. I mean, I think Tony Gilroy was like given a challenge. He's like, I need to write a character cooler than Han Solo. Done.
But the other point I want to bring to this, and I think this is something that I am hoping is the start of a trend, not only for Star Wars, but for a lot of other properties out there. You had a writer in Tony Gilroy who had the clout, who came in, and he's like, I don't really care about Star Wars. I'm going to write the story I want to write. It just happens to be in this universe. Mm-hmm. And I think we need to look at that more, because I think it proves a point that you don't have to have somebody who's necessarily a fan of the universe to write a good story within the universe, as long as they understand the universe and are dealing within a part of the universe that is comfortable to within what their expertise lies. And I think that is what's happened with Tony Gilroy. And it's amazing to watch, and also practical on-site location shooting, not using the volume, things like that. Andor has changed it, I think, the game for how not only Star Wars does a series, but how Marvel might do their series going forward. I'm going to be very curious. Like you talked about Link, Scott, we have Daredevil Born Again, which is going to be 18 episodes long too. Mm-hmm. So it's going to be interesting to see what changes this might bring on, or is it going to be because of how some people have felt about Andor? It's like, well, maybe we need to find a middle ground here. I don't know, and that's what I'm looking forward to finding out as far as the dynamic of Andor.
Yeah. Nathan?
Yeah, so there's something that I said much earlier in this series, and that is there should be enough Star Wars that there should be Star Wars that's not for you. So I think Kevin made a point earlier about how there are people who really are missing the lightsabers and the Jedi. And I'm not knocking those people. They are out there, and that's their preference. But not everything in Star Wars should be lightsabers and Jedi. And one thing I really love about Andor is it's not that. Even though we've got a little bit of that peppered in with like the holocrons in the background and Luthen's shop, it's really about non-Force users. And it's good that we have something like that now. Even if that's not your personal preference as our listeners, that's okay. This doesn't have to be your favorite show. As a matter of fact, I think I like season 1 of The Mandalorian a little bit better than Andor. Not by much, but a little bit, and that's fine.
Yeah, totally. For me, Andor has very much been that kind of James Bond or Jason Bourne in space in Star Wars, right? Derek, what are your thoughts about season 1 and the series as a whole so far?
I already told you guys after episode 4, Andor is the best thing in Star Wars, period.
Yeah.
Outside of the original trilogy, and the stuff that comes into that, but for everything that's been after the original trilogy and even after the Ewoks movies, because I still love those, this is basically Clone Wars live action.
Yes.
And that's what makes this the best thing, because it's not about what you guys just talked about. It's not about just one particular character, or it's not particular about lightsabers and the Skywalker family, right? This is what we've been wanting for a long time. And that's why I love Clone Wars. That's why I love Rebels. And it's the same reason I'm loving the live action, or not the live action, I'm sorry, the Disney Plus streaming of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. These things deserve to be well written, needs to be stories. I don't need it in an hour and a half to 2 hour movie. This is why we need, the things that we love about our characters. We need time for them to digest, develop, and grow. And that's what you're able to get in this series. And then you get somebody like Tony Gilroy. To your point, Kyle, Tony Gilroy at least respects the universe, though.
Exactly.
Right? That's different, because you could say about the same thing about Rian Johnson. Love Rian Johnson's movies, but didn't care for the way he wanted to write the Skywalker in the movie, right? With The Last Jedi. Now, again, not saying that isn't what some people enjoyed. Some people enjoyed it. I felt like it would have been better had he done it, right? And, obviously, shout out to our good friend Adam O'Brien, who's been posting something about Rian Johnson every day on the Facebook page, because apparently he's got this hard-on for right now for Looper and everything else, too. But and again, I think Rian Johnson's a phenomenal filmmaker if he's given something else other than, to the same thing, play in the sandbox, right? Just what Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni have done, right? Just respect some of the stuff, but go off and play in the sandbox, because the universe is so large. And I'm sure taking those great story writers, and they can really make us some really good stories in the Star Wars universe.
Yeah, go Kyle.
Just to go on what Derek was saying too, the other thing, and I think this is very important, is that you're seeing it not only with Star Wars, but the other things on Disney Plus and on the Marvel side too. They're taking chances. They're starting to get out of the formulas. They're starting to realize, wait a minute, we have this platform that we can take some risks with, try some other things. It's not a multi-billion-dollar film we're putting out. We're putting out something on streaming, and we can take some risks with it. And I think this is something that has been the natural progression, not only here with what Andor is, because I feel like Andor really is the first thing we've gotten in Star Wars that's starting to progress outside of what we clarify as the typical Star Wars formula. I think this is really the first thing that's going live action, that's going outside of the box like that. Just like I think Marvel went outside of the box with several things they've done in phase 4. And I think that's a good thing. And I think it's something we need more of, because I think to survive and not get fandom burnout on these franchises, they've got to adapt and realize within the fandom there are subsets, and we can't sit there and write something in the same formula that's going to please everybody all the time, because you're going to get repetitive and you're going to get stuck in that formula. You need to break open, take some chances. Yes, it might not be for everybody, but that's okay. There needs to be diversity in our programming.
Yeah. Marvel branched out to do things this year like Werewolf by Night, right? And
Mhm.
Andor is kind of a Star Wars experimental like that, right? It's not quite as off the rails as Werewolf by Night, but from a Star Wars fan viewpoint, it's really out there. Andor is. It's a very different kind of thing. But we can't keep watching someone like Luke Skywalker or Luke himself continually go on the hero's journey. I mean, if we did that for every story, like Kyle said, we'd have Star Wars fan burnout. The problem is, I think that the Lucasfilm executives got too gun shy about it with the reactions to The Last Jedi, which was out of the box, and then also the reactions to Solo, which, while a great Star Wars film, was definitely out of the box. It was a different kind of thing than what we had seen in Star Wars movies before. So, yeah, Kyle.
Just on that point, difference being Solo, and with what Rian Johnson then did in The Last Jedi, you're taking established characters that are highly cared about and have a certain path. With Andor, we know his fate, but we don't know his story. So there was nothing, there was no prior investment to what they had been before. We only know what we saw from Andor as an end product. So you had this huge sandbox to work with, and that's what we need more in Star Wars, is to start exploring more of that, making the sandbox bigger, not keeping it condensed to Skywalker saga or the saga. It's expanded out. It's a universe, not a box.
Yeah, totally. All right, I'm going to call an audible and ask a roundtable question that I didn't actually write down here, but I feel like Kyle wanted to talk about this a little bit earlier in this episode of the podcast. But now that the leadership at Disney has changed again, or some might even say reversed course, do we think that's going to have a big impact on the kind of storytelling risk that Lucasfilm will try for? Kyle, I'll go ahead and start with you. Now that Mr. Iger is back, how's that going to impact what's happening for Star Wars specifically?
I think there will be a little bit more creative freedom, and people will be a little bit more free to express thoughts and ideas. One of the things that happened when Bob Chapek took over was he really condensed down the creative leadership of Disney to like a small group of people. And he really maintained control and really kind of had an agenda he expected from a lot of the programming that was coming. I think if he would have had his way, everything would have been going to Disney, straight to Disney Plus. Mm-hmm. I think Iger coming back on the Star Wars side will open up some more creative windows, and I think it will finally get the ball rolling on the conjointed mess that is a Star Wars movie right now. And I think he's going to go in, clean some house, tell some people you're out of here. You're not doing your project. Or you know what? Go get it actually hashed out. Then come back and talk to me.
Right.
One of the things that I know he did too was he put out an email to the entire Disney staff. If you have a creative idea, bring it to me now. This is the time. So I think Iger is there for a multitude of reasons, but I'm just focusing on the creative side of it. I think in the long run, it's going to create a little more freedom for Disney. And I think what you're going to see is, I know there's been a lot of knock on certain types of ideas and agendas being put into Disney products, Marvel products, whatever. I don't think you're going to feel that as much, but I think it's going to be more creative freedom to express their ideas.
Yeah, Derek.
So Bob Iger left in 2020. Everything we're getting now, Bob Iger approved. Mm-hmm. So just so you guys know, so everything we're getting, I think to your point, Kyle, what they weren't getting on the table from Chapek, because also, apparently he was a real dickhead. And that's really what upset a lot of people, especially your Favreaus, your Filonis, your people from the Kevin Feige. I heard, some rumors that those two, and as much as, we can complain about some things about Marvel Universe, you don't mess with the Feigster, right? I mean, yeah. He's basically helped revitalized everything, right? So I think when that happened, that's where the board, because if you think about it, the guy didn't even last more than 2 years, right? At this point. So
no, he lasted 3. He lasted 3, believe it or not.
So, well, I guess, there was kind of the little bit of overlap before Iger fully retired. But anyways, I mean, at that point, I mean, that's really, like I said, everything we've gotten was still on the table, already talked about when Iger was there. So that's the good thing. And then to what Kyle's point, that was the problem, right? There wasn't anything new and innovative coming with Chapek. It was all just going to be on Disney Streaming Plus, which, to be fair, I've loved everything on the streaming, so I don't really care. Movies are great and all that stuff, and yeah, we got to have it, but I didn't get a chance to talk on a Marvel with Wakanda Forever, but to me, they should have left that on streaming instead of taking it into a movie, because it would have done better, in my opinion, for storytelling. But I like long and developed stories. I don't need a 2-hour brash movie. So, but anyways, I think overall it's good stuff. Obviously, like I said, stock's already going back up. I think fans will be that, but really it's the internal powers that are going to be happy. And when you have those people, because they're the ones, let's be honest, it's not like Iger or Chapek were even the ones making those. I mean, they make some decisions, but they're not the creative team, to Kyle's point, right? So if the creative team is happy, then we're going to continue to see great stuff. But there's probably going to be a little bit of a delay on some things. Mm-hmm. So, who knows, like I said, with the Star Wars Disney movies, to Kyle's point, hopefully we'll get that figured out. But again, if you're going to continue to give me Andor, Mandalorian, Bad Batch, all that stuff, I'm okay. Like I said, I mean, I understand, it's great to see Star Wars on the big screen, but if they're going to give us something original, that's fine. But if it's going to be, again, something in the Skywalker saga, I really don't need to see it. I'd rather just see it on Disney streaming.
Kevin, Bob Iger's the reason that Disney owns Lucasfilm. And there's a really great book that talks about him and George Lucas interacting and so forth. Are you happy to see Bob Iger coming back, or is this like a huge red flag that things are in trouble in the House of Mouse? I mean, what's the deal here, Kevin?
A little bit of column A, a little bit of column B there. I like to quote one of my friends from the 501st, BJ Savage, and he said, Ferrix is the Star Wars land we should have got. Because I want to see, like Kyle said, I want to see the creatives have a little more influence, and just have a plan. And, I've worked for people that said, look, I've worked in marketing before, and they said, look, if you got an idea, yes, bring it to me, but give me a plan here. Show me how you're getting from point A to point Z, basically, and fill in those parts, and we'll see if we can work from that. And I just hope that this affects the story groups of future planning of movies, because my big issue is no movies and the parks. The parks apparently are struggling, and they painted themselves into a corner there. And it's almost like when it comes to Galaxy's Edge, because that's a big deal with this as well, because apparently they're not doing too well. Kyle can speak more on that because we had a discussion offline about that. But I want a reason to go back to that part that feels a little more familiar. I want people listening to people that know what they're doing, and that have the fans' ear. And to me, the first person that had that was Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni. But Jon Favreau, because of his muscle, made it happen sooner than later, and became kind of like, I know what this generation wants. And I think that people like that, they need to lean on more. And Feige, obviously, don't touch the Feige, don't touch the Kevin, that type of thing. Let those people who know do that. And also, too, when you see people like Tony Gilroy, maybe you're not getting the streaming numbers, but you're getting the fans who have watching it a lot of praise. I haven't seen where Tony's going to go from this, but let people also, if they have a good story and they're not Star Wars fans, or they're casual, go down that road. Take more chances, like Kyle was alluding to earlier. Take more chances. And I don't know if Iger's going to see that. Iger, that book was interesting. I didn't read it, but I got a lot of feedback. I looked into certain passages and, his regret on how he dealt with Lucas and such. I hope he learned from that, because I think when people learn from their mistakes, I think they can look at it from a different perspective. And that's what Disney, Lucasfilm need to do with the Star Wars property. Look at it from a different perspective this time. Don't go in as a board member. Don't go in with like, that's my buddy, we're going to stick with this and try to figure it out. Look for people out there and reward them. Turn that creative that just did something well there, give them more responsibility and let them run with it.
Yeah, Iger's the kind of leader that acts big, right? He takes big risks, and he fails big. Yeah, and so that whole thing with George Lucas, he admits that he probably failed that, right? But in order to
bring George back,
oh my gosh, in order to get big successes, you sometimes have to first have a big failure that you can learn from.
Yeah,
Kyle.
Yeah.
Kyle?
Just to throw this out too, because there's a lot of rumors going around. I've been really following the story closely because I find it very fascinating. Something big is going to happen in Disney within the next 2 years while Iger is there. He's there for three reasons. Get the ship set right, because the parks are a disaster area. Even though there's tons of people going, your experience is, if you cross the board, not good. Get certain products like Disney Animation, which Bob Chapek did everything in his power to try and kill.
Yeah.
And get that squared away, get a few little things in creative squared away, and to find a new person to successor him. Bob Iger is probably going to finish out Bob Chapek's contract, and I think he's going to be grooming somebody probably starting within the next few months. We're going to start seeing it. But you're also already starting to see some new blood appear within these different factions as well. Obviously, you have Tony Gilroy coming in to do Andor. You've got a producer over on the Marvel side by the name of Nate Moore, who's been a big part of Wakanda Forever and a few other upcoming projects. He's kind of starting to look like he might be somebody who's kind of getting developed to become part of that leadership with Feige to come to the time when Feige does decide to step away. But there's a lot of pieces going on right now, but there's a lot of rumors. Disney's either going to make a major acquisition over the next 2 years, or there's a chance Disney is the acquisition over the next 2 years.
Yeah,
so
and
it's going to be very interesting how that plays out.
I've heard the entity in question, either the buyer or the buyee, is a certain fruit-flavored computer company. So, yeah.
Elon Musk isn't going for Disney, is he?
God, I hope not.
No, you don't have to worry about the apples. No, but to your point, though, Kevin, it would be interesting because I unfortunately I don't have enough friends. I know you have a ton of friends. To see if you had somebody who's a Game of Thrones fan but not a Star Wars fan, let them watch Andor.
Yeah,
I'm curious what their response would be.
I did a social media post about that, and it was interesting because I got responses from both sides. People, Star Wars fans, casual fans, maybe that were like, "Nah, I don't need to know anything more about Andor." And unfortunately, and I feel bad for those people that felt that way. And then the casual fans, I made a plea. This is great drama. Please check it out. And now that all the episodes are out, I think there's going to be that group 2 that will just stream it and marathon it. And maybe that will that'll help as well. Because, Nathan.
So this past weekend, when I was in Tennessee visiting my family, my dad asked if Andor was any good, and I told him, yes, absolutely, you should watch this. And then he asked, is there anything I have to watch beforehand? And I told him, well, Andor was in Rogue One, but I'd really like for you to watch Andor first and then Rogue One. So we are conducting the experiment. I'll let you know how it goes.
Cool. That's awesome.
I want that update. That sounds fascinating. I love that.
Yes, I will let you know.
All right. Well, Nathan, what are your thoughts about the whole Bob Iger replacing Bob Chapek in charge of Disney thing?
Well, I'm usually more focused on the end product than I am all the background people, other than Dave Filoni and D. Bradley Baker. But I don't know as much about the Bobs. But from what you guys are telling me, it reminds me of a certain scene in the Thrawn trilogy where Thrawn himself has this idea. He says, we're going to do something this way. And Captain Pelayan, I think it's
Pelayan.
However you pronounce his name, says, well, why don't we do it this other way? And then freezes. And Thrawn's just like waiting for some more information. Like what is your idea? And the captain's like, sorry, I may have spoken out of turn. And Thrawn says, you've spent too much time serving under Vader. I am not going to throw away an idea or outright kill somebody just because the better idea was not my idea. So hopefully the new /
real Bob.
Real Bob will be more like Thrawn and will accept ideas that aren't his, even if they're not his, because they are better ideas.
Deep cut, Nathan. I like that one. That was a good one.
Yeah.
He's like, I'm not getting choked or fed to the nogri.
Maybe in Iger's office, he's got one of those motivational posters, and maybe it's the Thrawn saying right there, right? Maybe.
Yeah, that would be so great. That would be great. All right. Well, speaking of the Grand Admiral, let's move on to our predictions or hopes or even fears about Andor Season 2 that's on its way. And I'll segue to this with Grand Admiral Thrawn. I actually hope that we see a live-action Grand Admiral Thrawn doing something on the Imperial side in Andor Season 2, because, he might not yet be of the rank of Grand Admiral, but Thrawn is definitely working in the Empire at this point in the storyline. So it'd be cool to have him, if not a full-fledged, recurring character in Season 2, but at least an Easter egg where they're at some ISB meeting and there's a blue guy in the background and people are like, oh my gosh, is that Thrawn?
But when does he get sucked into the whales?
So I think that's later on than Season 2, right? Of course, I guess we don't know precisely when Season 2 of Andor is happening, but...
But to Nathan or to Kyle's point earlier, if Marva's speech and Ezra's speech are happening at the same time, then wouldn't that happen? Like the whales being sucked in with Ezra and Admiral Thrawn be pretty much right after Lothal rises?
Well, Ezra's speech is a little bit before the Purrgil episode, right? Well, I guess it depends on which speech Kyle was talking about.
I assumed was the Lothal. Because wasn't that season 4 with Ezra's speech?
Wasn't there an earlier one where he hijacked the radio signal and gave like a galaxy-wide address?
That's the one I was referring to.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay, so maybe
I love the fact that you remembered that, Derek, because I appreciate that because I didn't think about that. So thank you for doing
that. That's the only thing, because I was thinking, because I felt like Thrawn would have to show up now before season 2, because at that point he'll be sucked into space and we won't get him, but we'll technically get him in Ahsoka, which comes out before season 2. Right? Because Ahsoka started filming already too.
Yeah, Ahsoka will be in 2023. Right now, season 2 of Andor looks like it's 2024, and I think they're saving Thrawn for Ahsoka. You will not.
Well, but what I mean is, by the time season 2 of Andor shows up, we'll have already seen Thrawn on Ahsoka.
I don't think Tony's going to. Just my personal opinion. I think Tony's very much.
You can totally be right.
He's going to avoid major Star Wars characters for the most. He's developing his characters. I mean, Mon was really the biggest character he's brought in that was already an established character next to Cassian. I think he's really developing his characters and his world. So he's got, I think, should get more Saw, but that's just my feeling. Is don't be looking for a ton of Easter eggs in Andor.
I think we could get Krennic before we get Thrawn.
Yeah. Okay, and that would be another, tie-in to Rogue One. Also, in fairness to my theory here, Gilroy seems to be a little alien shy. Not a whole lot of alien stuff going on in Andor.
Except there was a Goridian.
Yes, there was a Goridian.
Past episode. But I've gone back and double-checked some dates here. The speech happens in 4 BBY. Which is about a year after the start of season 1 of Andor. And of course, Andor takes place over some period of time. We know at least a month that Andor was in jail. The Purrgil doesn't happen until season 4, which is in 1 BBY.
Okay.
So Thrawn is around and doing stuff. So time frame wise, it fits. Although I agree, Tony Gilroy doesn't seem to be taking too much from existing characters other than Mon Mothma. So I'm thinking maybe a cameo at best, but it would definitely be like, there's a blue guy in the background.
Yeah. But he seems to be hesitant to include aliens in general, so that's okay. The other thing I predict will happen is, and I think this is almost guaranteed already, K2SO shows up in season 2.
That's already confirmed. So
yeah. Okay, Kevin, what are your thoughts, hopes, projections for season 2?
Obviously, I'm curious to see where Luthen's going to go because I kind of get the feeling he's not going to survive. But I know it's kind of a grim thought, but because the character of Mon Mothma is being flushed out so damn well with the crap that she has to hide and, I'm sorry, what's her name? Genevieve O'Reilly, that's her name, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yes.
Just the two-face that she has to put on. I can see her losing everything. Horrible husband, not too bad, but daughter, I just get the feeling that's not going to end well at all. Her friend, her old school friend, crush, whatever, forgetting his name. It's going to be interesting to see what happens there. But I hate to wish bad stuff on a character, but I just see it coming, and I can't wait to see what that happens because Genevieve O'Reilly has just been enthralling and has been absolutely perfect in every scene that she has done, and I find that part of this story extremely compelling.
Well, if it does end up costing her everything, she'll have finally gotten to that same viewpoint that Luthen was at the beginning of season 1, where she goes to him and talks to him at his store, and it's kind of like, are you crazy? I can't do all these things. And he basically is giving her the whole "I give up everything" speech, and so maybe she'll reach the point where she
I
does too.
want to. Yeah, and I want to see him kind of groom her more, harden her up a little bit before the worst happens to her, if that makes any sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Kyle.
I think in that case with Mon too, I don't think she loses everything, but she loses enough to understand Luthen's point of view. And I think it's going to play a lot with her cousin as well. I think that's a big thing that they're really going to dive into more, because I could see something where Mon does something and gets herself in trouble. Her cousin goes to be the one to try to get her out of it. And the ramifications of that are really what get Mon to realize she's got to take herself to another level if she's going to do this. I don't think she loses everything because of where she's at in Jedi, but I think she definitely she has to go into a place she has never been before, and she's going to come out a different person from it.
Yeah. Derek, what are your hopes and projections for season 2?
My hopes are that they're rewriting season 2 right now, that they're going to give us 4 or 5 seasons. So to what Kyle put earlier, that this should be a year each season, right, or whatever it is, because there's just so much potential that I don't again think 2 seasons is going to be enough, right? That they're going to have to do all this time jumping and plot holes filling in and all that stuff. And I'm not saying that Tony Gilroy can't do it, right? Because that's the good thing about it, is that he wrote this story with the anticipation of 2 seasons already. And when we were starting to get rumor of that, we were like, well, are they doing 2 seasons, or are they splitting season 1 into 2 halves? And, with when we had all this stuff before, and it was like, no, basically Disney already gave him the thing and said, go ahead and do 2 seasons. Cause at this point, they were already planning to do 2 seasons. It wasn't like Disney, regardless of how well Andor did, because again, it's not hitting the true numbers that we're hoping. Again, it's getting great reviews, but it's not hitting the numbers that, like Netflix would have canceled it already. Right.
Yeah.
So, so the great thing about Disney is they're not doing that. And like I said, I'm hoping that, Iger's already come in and told Tony Gilroy, I need 4 or 5 seasons of this.
Yeah, that would be great. Nathan, your thoughts about possibilities of season 2?
Well, I totally agree with I hope we get 4 to 5 seasons, because I want the final scene of Andor as an entire series to be somebody higher up in the rebellion telling Andor, so we need you to go get this girl off this train. And lead right into Rogue One. And I don't think we can get there with just one more season. But for season 2, if we're limiting to just that, Luthen likes to get the different pieces of his rebellion together. He went to Saw Gerrera and asked him to join Krieger's mission, even though in the end he realized, oh, the ISB knows, so please don't go. He initially wanted that. So I would like to see Andor joining in different portions of the rebellion as kind of that play piece where Luthen can say, okay, go over here now and help out Saw with something. Okay, now go over here and help out somebody else. Maybe even hint that he goes and helps the rebels on Lothal, even if we don't show it. Oh yeah, I just got back from Lothal doing whatever. Yeah. Don't even make it a cameo. Just name drop it, kind of like name dropping Canto Bite.
Yeah.
But that way we can kind of keep this segmented. The first 3 episodes of season 1 are almost their own little story, and then we've got the Aldhani story, and we could do something similar to that with different parts of the rebellion. That's what I'd really like to see.
Yeah, that would be awesome.
I'm also open to being surprised. I don't want to know everything. So if it's not that doesn't mean I'm going to be disappointed.
Speaking of Krieger, there was a line in episode 12 of Andor where the guy who's interrogating Mon Mothma's driver, is standing there receiving his report, basically. I guess not interrogating, but receiving his report. And the dude walks by in the hallway, and he goes, "Krieger, you're missing it," which I thought was almost like on the nose of telling us, the viewers, we too are going to miss it because we're not going to get to actually see the fight where Krieger gets killed and all his men die, right?
I thought that was funny because the ISB agent, I think it was Blevin, was
yeah,
not putting together the connections of the report.
Mm-hmm.
So he was missing it as well.
Mon Mothma was all, and he took the bait big time. I loved it. It was great. Kyle, yeah, you had something to add.
Well, just one of the things I would like to see actually in season 2 is the continued development of the other characters that we've been introduced to. And I know it's still Andor showing. I have a feeling season 2 might be a little bit more Andor centric because of just but I really hope they use the opportunity, like let's say Bix. I really want to see the fallout of what Bix has been through and see her develop, because what I could see coming out of this, if we don't necessarily get more seasons of Andor, I would love some Star Wars special presentations where we get some episodes focusing on some of these characters and use it like bait. Let's see what the interest is here. Is this going to get a lot of response? If it is, then maybe, hey, we can throw 6 episodes out for a big show or something like that. But do it that way instead of just automatically giving us a show. So let's find out what people are really interested in. Do it that way. It's cheaper. It's not making a huge commitment. And then if you feel like, hey, the interest is there, then we can dive in more. You have, again, this is where Disney needs to learn how to use Disney Plus as a TV. We have the ability to throw pilots out there, make them a special presentation, and then go from there. You already hear the rumors of Marvel doing this with several characters over the next couple of years to see how much should we incorporate this character into the MCU. Star Wars, you have ample opportunity to do that here with some of these characters, new characters that you're establishing. Use it.
Totally.
So you already mentioned it with Alan Tudyk next season, but I do hope there's one cameo that we do get that we haven't talked about yet. Would be Jimmy Smits playing Bail Organa. So we need that. I mean, come on, the dude deserves it. I mean, come on, there's everything Jimmy does has been phenomenal. So
yeah,
I like to see him continue to get and Kyle brought a good point up with characters, but I want to see it more with the Empire too. I want to see more ISB, right?
Oh yeah,
and we got the Wolf Yularen reference, right? They recasted him, but I mean, there's no reason we can't get a Mahdi or a Tag or even a Tarkin, right? Get something, get Krennic in there too as well. But those types of things, just those small little things make it fun, and it's not overly, it's kind of what Mando did, but again, it doesn't have to be some Force user stuff, right? Just give us something, give one of those characters, and I think that'll make it more fun. But really draw those. But you also got the platform where you could draw the stuff out. Like, again, one of the best novels within the Disney era that I still feel to this day is the Tarkin book. That is a really good novel. And it'd be great to again explore that character, because I feel like it's a missed opportunity for us to see again a well out villain enough where Vader was afraid of basically a man, and what made Vader afraid of that man called Tarkin, right? Besides the Emperor, right? But outside of that, I mean, it's the same thing with Thrawn, right? Obviously, we're going to get with that with the Ahsoka. So get us somebody, that's going to be decent in season 2, because they're going to have to step it up, right? I mean, we look at this point now where Deidre is going to be a shell of herself, I'm guessing, because she's not going to be the baddie. Cyril, we didn't get any of our predictions right with Cyril because again, they're still in the closet making out, we're assuming. But at this point, you got to give us, if you're going to step it up now that the Empire has to take the rebellion serious at this point, right? With everything that's going on besides, what we get eventually in Rebels and all that stuff, you're going to have to bring somebody else in, right? So,
yeah, totally. All right, well, it's time for Derek's favorite part of the show, and we'll have 5 answers tonight, so that'll be great. And that is, of course, what Star Wars t-shirts are we wearing this week? So, Kevin, you found something new down there in the Land of Oz. What Star Wars t-shirt are you wearing?
Yeah. Well, first of all, they have Black Friday sales here, even though they don't have like a traditional Thanksgiving on that that we normally do, because it's the lead into, of course, the holiday shopping season. So there's all these sales throughout the weekend and stuff, and they have GameStop. Of course, I like to go to GameStop for not just games, but for and the toys and stuff. And they had a sale, and I got this Boba Fett shirt for $9, which I think came out to like 75 cents US. I don't know.
Epic with the green and black there. Yeah, that's great. 75 cents.
Love this shirt. There you go.
I don't think the exchange rate's that bad, but
yeah, but still. For me, I was like, score.
It was probably somewhere like around $5 though.
Well, I was gonna say, even at $9, it's still a
yeah.
sharp looking shirt. So I'd be fine with $9. I mean, that's like what you get at Kohl's, right? For when it's on the sale rack for 50% off. So
yeah, totally. I love it. All right, Derek, what Star Wars T-shirt do you have on this episode?
I mean, come on, guys. It's a 100th episode, right? I mean, we didn't get to really talk about some of our favorite moments, Scott, that we've done over the past few years. Obviously, it's been a blast. I'm hoping for 100 more and all that fun stuff. So, of course, right, I have to wear the casual "What a Piece of Junk" to promote.
Excellent. Yes, a beautiful blue "What a Piece of Junk" Star Wars podcast T-shirt from the Fandom Podcast Network. And yes, it has been a spectacular 100 episodes. Kyle, what Star Wars shirt do you have on this week?
Well, I figured since we were talking about the rise of the rebellion, I'd go with a little bit of the rise of the resistance.
Ah, beautiful.
This is the pass holder exclusive shirt from when Rise of the Resistance first opened at Galaxy's Edge. You could get it for about the first 2 weeks the ride was open. I still had my annual pass at that point, and I just figured, the rebellion is rising. Let's represent some rise of resistance with sporting the rise of the resistance.
I like it. Nathan, what do you got on for a Star Wars shirt?
Longtime listeners will recognize this one. It is one of my favorites. This is my 40th anniversary Star Wars celebration baseball tee. Now, Kevin, I couldn't let it go. The accountant in me said I had to know. It's about $6.
There you go.
Woohoo! Score!
Yeah.
$6 T-shirt.
An excellent price. And for me, because I was leaning toward the whole Grand Admiral Thrawn being part of season 2 of Andor, at least in my, headcanon, eternal hopium, I'm wearing my Thrawn T-shirt that has the big blue guy himself there with the Chiss Ascendancy logo behind him. So whether we see him,
where'd you get that?
So Mita bought this for me. I don't even know where she got it. She ordered it online somewhere, and she was like, "I know you like this guy, and you read his novel and all." So yeah, it's Star Wars Thrawn.
Can you have her message me where she got it? Because I want that shirt.
Yeah, right. It's a great shirt. I'll ask her where it came from and see if I can check the tag or something. I don't know.
I mean, it's newer, obviously, since you said it's from the newer novels. It's
and it's got that red
the
creature here, the emblem. Yeah. Yeah, cool. But yeah, Derek brought up a good point. We didn't really talk about some of our favorite moments of this podcast here for our 100th episode. So to close out, I'm going to go around the horn and you guys can talk about some of your favorite moments. For me, it was getting to interview Eric Walker from the Ewok movies because I loved those movies as a kid, and getting the chance to interview someone who was in a Star Wars production and personally directed by George Lucas is just the highlight of podcasting. This is actually the third podcast I've been a part of over the years. It's my favorite one so far. I'm glad to say I keep improving and getting better at podcasting, and interviewing a Star Wars actor who worked with George Lucas that I watched on TV on VHS over and over until the tape broke was just amazing. If you had told me 5 years ago that I'd ever get to do that, I'd be like, no, you're crazy. That's never going to happen. But it did. So shout out to a friend of the show, Eric Walker. And that was the highlight for me of these first 100 episodes of, as Derek said, I hope to be many, many more episodes. Derek, do you have a particular moment or series of moments that was a highlight for you?
We've talked a bit about it. I mean, again, this is, when Kyle and Kevin initially posted about it and what they thought was bringing the whole reason of having a Star Wars podcast join the Fandom Podcast Network was because of the release of Mandalorian, right? Again, I will still stick with it. I think Andor is the best written thing so far that Disney's produced when it comes to Star Wars. But at the end of the day, the Mandalorian in my opinion, has saved Star Wars in what it's done. So, to me, for us to continue to do that, and it's exciting for us going, past our 100th episode, going into the year 2023, being able to soon talk about Mando season 3 is really just, the highlight of just being, like I said, able to come on, talk Star Wars with it. And it's just been phenomenal. So I would say that first episode and why we were brought together, was probably my favorite.
Yeah, good times. Kevin, do you have a memory or a highlight from our podcast here?
Yeah, first of all, you guys have been doing a bang up job, and I appreciate you guys taking on the duty of talking about a fandom that is so big, and it's on our network, and you guys have been awesome. I really appreciate your guys doing that and bringing all kinds of different thoughts and ideas. And you guys bounce off each other really well. I remember the time Kyle and I were going like, this is cool. I think they should also keep Nathan. Because Nathan was guessing. And Nathan, I got to tell you, you've really impressed me with your insight because you come at it from a different angle a lot, and I do appreciate that. But Derek and Scott, you guys have been doing a great job. But I have a personal favorite. And Derek, it's when you and I did Shadows of the Empire special. I got maybe a little too nerdy about that, but I loved it. It was so much fun. It was so much fun because of the nostalgia that I have for that time, for all the things whether it was the comics, the action figures, the video game, of course, the book itself. And it was so much fun diving back into that. So that was my favorite moment.
Yeah.
I was going to say, one of the things the listeners may not know unless if they podcasted with Kevin. See, like Nathan, Scott, and myself, we're pretty shellac when it comes to show notes, but Kevin likes to go all out. So I imagine he had more fun putting together the show notes and putting everything and going back through his head, be like, oh my God, I love this moment. I love this moment. What about this? Right. Putting all those notes together before we actually did the podcast.
Feel free to call it a manifesto. That's fine.
Yeah, several dozen pages for one
pictures,
episode.
everything.
Kyle's laughing a little extra because he knows how anal I get about notes, and he's seen my manifestos. So yeah,
Moby Dick is a light read.
Yeah, totally.
Touche.
Glad you enjoyed that episode, Kevin. It was fun. So,
okay, Kyle, any favorite moments, fond memories of the first 100 episodes of What a Piece of Junk?
Honestly, for me, it's watching you guys grow. I mean, starting off with you, Scott, and Derek, and then Nathan joining in and bringing. I think he was the piece of the puzzle that really brought you guys up to another level. But seeing you guys grow, and I'll say it. I've had people tell me your coverage of Andor has been the best thing you guys have done. So, I mean, something to be very proud of. And I'm just really proud of how you guys have grown as podcasters and with the show itself, and really taken on the show and really shown your pride in doing the show and your energy that you bring. You have your own style to it, and it's different from mine and Kevin's, but it's a great energy, and it's a great love of Star Wars. And it's not been easy to do a Star Wars podcast these last couple of years. The fandom has been torn apart. There's been toxicity, but you guys have always done it with a fairly positive spin, but not been afraid to express when you dislike something. So I give you guys so much credit for just being true to yourselves with this podcast and still be making it an open forum and a good place to talk about Star Wars and not letting it go down other paths. As far as like favorite moments, it's the time I got to retrofit the cape closet was always fun, but unfavorite moments is all these unpaid parking tickets that come to the network headquarters.
Oh, we're having some communications network breakdown. I didn't quite get that last part. Just tell me later.
Scott, I did have a question about Drunken Gungan rentals. Is there something I should know about?
Space Uber is not a thing, and I'm in no way making extra money with this starship as a side hustle.
Somebody taking the Gungan to a different convention or something. Somebody took it to the big Star Wars celebration.
Nope, totally didn't happen.
That was a work trip. We need to submit a reimbursement request for that. By the way.
That's right.
Yeah, when you pay your parking tickets, then we'll talk.
Expense report.
The space odometer went from here to here.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Yes.
It doesn't go in. It doesn't shrink when you put it in reverse.
Oh, we couldn't pull a Ferris Bueller.
Yeah, we're just gonna park it.
We'll fly backwards.
Yeah. Nathan, before we get too into the weeds here, any favorite memories, special moments from the first 100 episodes?
Yeah, I can't narrow it down to just one, so I'm going to say three. The first is, of course, when I first got to start being a guest and then becoming a full-time member here. That was a COVID thing. I started working from home, and that allowed me to say, yeah, you know what, 5:00 on a Friday, I can just turn my chair around and start podcasting. So that was great. We got to talk to Dominic Pace, who played Gecko, the bounty hunter. And I had done a little bit of research on him. And I can't even remember what it was, but I pulled something from his past, like one of the first roles he played, and asked him about that. And I think that really caught him off guard. And, and he laughed about that. And that was a lot of fun. And then talking to Caleb Grace very recently about the upcoming Star Wars The Deck Builder game.
Oh, yes.
I am big into that sort of gaming. I love the theory and thought behind how to make that sort of game. So getting to pick his brain just in general, even if it wasn't for the podcast, I would have loved that. But being able to do that in a way that people can go out and hear more about that game from us as well was just spectacular.
Outstanding. It's been a great 100 episodes. I look forward to many, many more. And if you guys out there listening want a cool What a Piece of Junk shirt like Derek has, or any other FPN merchandise, please check us out on the TeePublic store over at teepublic.com. You can find the show on the FPNet master feed, which is fpnet.podbean.com. Or at this point, we are on like any podcasting service that you can use: Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Google Play, etc. We're everywhere for your convenience. And you can find us on Facebook. Derek runs the What a Piece of Junk, a Star Wars podcast group on Facebook. I am still braving the dumpster fire that is Twitter right now, with the official Twitter for the show at What Wars. And then, of course, on Instagram, you can find us as part of the Fandom Podcast Network. And so we also hope that you folks out there will leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. It doesn't have to be 5 stars, but that does help us to keep the little Wookiee children fed, and we got to feed them something other than porgs, because that'll be a long-term problem.
They start looking at people's arms after a while.
Yes, totally. Well, anyway, so Kyle, where can people find you out there on social media?
You can find me on Facebook, just look up for Kyle Wagner. You can find me on Twitter at AKyleW, or on Instagram at AKyleFandom, and of course all over the place on the Fandom Podcast Network, including our master feed at fpnet.podbean.com, or our YouTube channel. Just search for the Fandom Podcast Network on YouTube. Give us a like, give us a subscribe, share us out. We love getting those reviews there as well.
Yeah. Kevin, where can folks find you on social media?
Well, I'm hanging out here down under in Australia, which has been great. I'm here for another week with my lovely wife, and but you can still reach me on Instagram and Twitter at Spartan_Phoenix, and of course on the Fandom Podcast Network and the What a Piece of Junk page, sharing stuff there as well, and just on Facebook under Kevin Reitzel.
Cool.
And by the way, congratulations, guys! I just want to say congratulations.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Yes, thank you. Derek, where can folks find you out there?
You can find me under my real name, Derek Marsh, on Facebook. You can find me on Twitter at Elon Musk. No, just joking.
Wait, no.
At Hoodie DM83. But I do not pay for a blue stamp, so just look for me, Derek Marsh, and you'll probably find me. So, but other than that,
Yep. All right, Nathan, where can the folks find you on social media?
Well, you can find me on Facebook under my real name, Nathan Miracle, or you can find me on Twitter or Instagram at Gooey Chewy. And, now I kind of want to put just the words blue check mark on the end of my Twitter handle.
Yeah. Yeah, that would be great. And if anybody wants to find me on Facebook, I am Scott Botman, and my Twitter handle for my personal feed is at ScotticusMax. So until next time, thank you so much, everyone, for joining us for these 100 episodes. And we want to encourage you all to please always respect each other and always respect each other's fandom. All right, Nathan, punch it.